Welcome back to the Glen Alex Show. I am your host, Glen Alex, and this is the Glen Alex Show, the 2023 Positive Change Podcast Award winner in health and wellness and psychology. Each episode of the Glen Alex Show focuses on a different aspect of health because I believe in total health. You're a whole and all of you matter. And I am on a mission to help you be joyful, connected, confident, and complete. The life experience I call wealth, WELLTH, which is health plus other riches. Please think about that seriously, because if more people were in pursuit of living in total health, then the world would be safe and loving for everyone. So please join us on this path, and please stay tuned for this really enlightening episode that I'm very excited about on emotional layers.
Welcome to the Glen Alex Show, where your health matters, set your mind, let it flow. Joyful, connected, confident, complete. Let Glen Alex help you back on your feet. The Glen Alex Show.
Please help me welcome my guest, Melissa Crook. Melissa is a woman in her 50s who is working to normalize conversations for women surrounding self-care, emotional health, boundaries, and embracing all of our beautiful and complex layers. She recognizes the barriers that women face, particularly our sisters in other marginalized communities, and is working to create a safe space for everyone and hosts open conversations to support, learn, and grow. The Feel, FEEL podcast is for women who are looking for a supportive and authentic space to go on this journey together. Melissa, welcome to the Glen Alex Show.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I appreciate it. I'm excited for our conversation today. I feel like you and I are doing a lot of the same thing, but in our own special, unique way. And that's what I love about these conversations is there's room for all of us, and we need to all be involved in doing this work together.
Absolutely. There's room for all of us, and there is definitely room for unique perspectives.
Exactly.
There are different paths to the same destination, and it's frustrating for me when people say, no, this is the only way to get there. No.
Yeah. It takes away from our uniqueness and authenticity. Everybody's got a different thing that works for them, that connects with them. We're not a monolith. I mean, self-care and health is not a monolith. It's unique to each individual. And I love your word wealth. I love that WEELTH so much because it's so all-encompassing. All these things go in together to build a healthy, rich life. And yes. I love that so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Now, I also appreciate you making time to be here and talk
Absolutely.
about one of my favorite subjects. Just give us a brief overview of how you came to do this work.
Well, it really was born out of my own experience and experiences I saw women I knew having. I've lived all over the country. I've got a lot of different friends from all kinds of different backgrounds, spaces, faith spaces, economic spaces, ethnic spaces. And my husband works in higher education. And so we've been exposed to a lot of different spaces throughout the country. And the common denominator seems to be that we as women tend to give until we've got nothing else left to give. And something happens. We have some kind of a breakdown in our bodies, physically, mentally, emotionally, sometimes all of those things together. Things show up somatically. In my, case, I ended up in the ER twice in a 2-week period in the fall of 2019, right when I was turning 50. We had just moved to a new job in Lubbock, Texas at Texas Tech University. Empty nesters. I thought this was going to be an easy move. And then my body just, started screaming at me for attention is essentially what happened. And so I was like, I'm not the only one going through this. I mean, I went through all these tests and it came down to just unprocessed trauma, emotions, things that had happened over the years that I stuffed on the back and went back and took care of everybody else, because that is what I had been doing from a very young age. That's the script so many of us are given as little girls, to put everybody else first.
So all of your medical exams and blood tests came back normal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so
Which
how
was,
did you just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it was great. And also like, well, what the heck is going on here?
Yes. So what was it that made you realize it was unprocessed emotions?
I had a really, you just never know. Those special nurses are angels. And I had a male nurse in the ER on my second visit who saw me both times. And he's like, I want you to call this holistic doctor. I think that this path and this is going to lead you to some helpful results. And it wasn't a doctor that was part of their system that he would normally recommend. He kind of whispered it in my ear. And so I did, and that encompassed with the fact that they brought up in the ER, like, many times anxiety attacks mirror the symptoms that you're having.
Mhm.
And my husband was like, maybe you ought to look into that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, we've been together at that point. We've been together 26, 27 years. And he's like, you have a relationship with anxiety. So he put it. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not anxious. I'm just on top of things. I'm hyper. He's like, I just think it's worth exploring. And so that, coupled with the doctor bringing up, he's like, you're probably in perimenopause. We've got some things going on here hormonally, which I kind of knew could be a case for my previous doctor, but hadn't really dove into a lot. We also don't talk about perimenopause and menopause and the impacts it has on our bodies. And so that, coupled with the fact that I got back into therapy and I had a whole truckload of things that had never been dealt with, never been felt, never been walked through. And my body was just screaming for attention. And I was like, I know too many women that are doing this. We have to stop. We have to stop putting ourselves last and start putting ourselves first. And because otherwise, we're not doing ourselves or anybody else any good.
Wait a minute, because real women do that. Real women, their only needs are to please and love and nurture other people. What are you talking about?
I know, exactly. That's the script we're given. I mean, I don't know when you got the script, but I got it about 4 or 5 years old. And so we're told that anything different than that is selfish, and
Yes.
that we're being selfish. And the not so funny about that is like, everyone's getting duped here, because if we actually take the time to prioritize our wellness, fill our cups, set healthy boundaries, process our emotions, acknowledge that we can feel multiple things at one time. We are nuanced. We don't have to just, oh, this is the only thing I can feel and there's no room for anything else.
Right.
Or we label emotions as good or bad. Emotions are clues. They're to let us know that something is coming up that we need to address, look at,
Yes.
examine.
Well, before we get too far into that aspect, because there is a lot I want to cover, I want to address what you said about putting self first.
Yeah.
I often tell my clients that if your cup is empty, you have nothing to give.
Exactly.
So where does that leave the people you love and are really trying to take care of?
Yeah.
Okay? So, like on an airplane, they tell you to put on your mask first. You're of no use to anybody else if you choke out and die, right?
Exactly. And that's why I always start with people like, listen, if you're struggling with this, if all of those voices in your head are screaming at you that you're being selfish, think about how you want to show up for the people in your life, your relationships, in your family, your friends, your workspaces. But my goal and my hope is that what people and women really get to by walking through these talking points that I use as kind of our cornerstone, that they'll get to a place of embracing and loving themselves well. And when you embrace and love yourselves well, then taking care of yourself becomes a non-negotiable, because you know your value and you know your worth. and you know that you are worthy of that time, of that space, of those healthy relationships with yourself and others. So that the hope is that you get there. But if you need some help getting started, how do you want to show up for other people? And the people that you love, do you want them to get the best, most authentic, healthiest version of you? Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Well, yeah, hopefully, exactly. If not, you want to examine that relationship. Because let me tell you this too, there are relationships that won't think that you're such a great person to be in relationship with when all of a sudden you start reprioritizing what you're doing in your life and when it is you are available to show up for them. When that narrative changes, you're going to find out in some cases the people that are really on your team and for you and want you the best for you, and those that maybe are, oh, this is not what I want. I like her being at my disposal all the time whenever I in to drop everything. And that's hard. And sometimes it's surprising who those people are, but
And sometimes
also
it's necessary.
exactly
It's necessary.
exactly.
Well,
And
and yet the other piece to that too is for when we become healthier ourselves, and that just improves the quality of what we have to give to others. So for the partner who's afraid that they're going to lose and miss out, and because, the woman is getting stronger and healthier for herself, they're wrong.
yeah,
If they support her in that, then what they will get is tenfold of what they're getting already. People just
yeah.
are so narrow-minded sometimes.
Yeah, we get locked into the narrative that we've been sold.
Yes.
And there's so much fear behind it too. If you do this is going to happen. I'm like, says who? This is just a narrative that we have bought and believed and followed, and it's not serving us. It's just not it's not serving us as women. It's not serving anybody. If you give this an opportunity in relationships, you're going to be stunned at what you've been missing out on in the relationship when you allow each other to show up authentically, whole, safely. It just changes everything if you are willing to, sit in the discomfort and the adjustment sometimes that might come with that. But it's tenfold what you get out of it if you're willing to hang. And if people aren't willing to hang, then they might not be people that are healthy for you. And,
Exactly. And that's okay too.
absolutely.
That's okay too. Now, I want to walk the audience through this because emotions tend to be murky for some
Yeah.
people. And when I work with clients on emotions, they have no idea what their physical sensations are that accompany the emotions. So let's just kind of walk through this, and tell us what you mean by emotional layers.
Okay, so for me, and I'll tell you based on my experience, this is how I've experienced it, and a lot of people I've talked to talk about the same thing, is that I used to there would be a primary emotion that I woke up with during the day, whatever that day thing was, and that would be the primary emotion, and I stuffed everything else, and I didn't recognize the fact I can be really excited about an opportunity and also be scared and fearful. I can see the value in being hired at this company and also see this company has a lot of work to do in creating safe spaces for women. Both things can be true. And I think that's where the emotion, we don't sometimes know what to do when we're feeling. So the one that feels uncomfortable or the one that feels less acceptable in the space will stuff or ignore or try to push back and deny. When in fact, that's going to come up later. I mean, we live in this myth, and it's going to show up in some unexpected ways. It might show up in tightness in your chest. It might show up in an upset stomach. It might show up in a headache, fatigue. For a long time, my midsection of my body would just get numb. I thought I was like, do I have MS? Do I have some kind of, what is happening here? And it was just those things that had been stuffed that I had not moved through. And as I started opening up and realizing this, and my mind and body started feeling safe experiencing this, I had like an override of somatic experiences. Like I was feeling things everywhere. And I was like, holy cow, what is happening? And I was working with a therapist, and she said, your brain and your nervous system finally feel safe to let these things come. So now we got to figure out, how do we move them through? We don't have to get to the root of every single one of them, but we need to acknowledge them, and how do we move them through? So that's what I'm talking about with the layers. And then once you kind of move through, you make space for other things. You make space for other layers. You all of a sudden recognize, oh gosh, when I go into the room with that person, my body seizes up a little. That might be a sign of a lack of safety or fear. Is that rooted in truth connected to them? Or is that rooted in a past experience with somebody similar, or something they said that triggered something? It just allows you to get in touch with those things. Emotional wheels are a big helper, because this can be overwhelming when it first starts.
Let me slow you down, because that's a lot of information.
Okay, yes, it is. I'm sorry. I keep going. I keep going, and I'm like,
yes, I see you're very passionate, and I love it. So, as for the layers, the surface layer is the physical sensations.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Absolutely.
The pit in the stomach, the trembling, the tightness in the chest, that's the surface layer.
Yep.
Too often, people just stop there.
Yes.
And they'll go and do something to mask it, to avoid it, to comfort it, and not go to the next layer, which is,
you got to feel it and acknowledge it.
Sit in it.
And we don't like sitting in the discomfort.
Who wants to be uncomfortable?
Exactly. You got to, and that you got to sit in it. And for me, something I do, and I don't know, is when I'm journaling, I will write down the emotions I'm feeling that day. And then I will look at each one and be like, all right, what is this rooted in? Is it rooted in truth? Is it rooted in an old narrative? Is it a combination of both? Or do I just not know? And it's okay to not know, but it informs me of like, okay, these are the things moving around in my body. Where am I feeling them? Because that helps inform, and it makes me I can't ignore it. If I've named it and acknowledged it, then it's out there and it's been exposed. And then I have to
give us an example.
Yeah. So I will write down, I'm feeling anxious today about, where's that come from? And sometimes I know, like, I'm feeling anxious about this experience. Why am I feeling anxious about that? Is that something, it's a new experience? I've had a bad experience with it in the past, where I don't spend a lot of time, but I focus more on getting them all down. I'm excited. Okay. I'm excited that my daughter just graduated from college and she's got this new thing coming, but I'm also nervous because I don't know how this thing is going to work out. So I put all that down, and then it's like, okay, so maybe that's why my stomach's a little queasy. I've got a nervous tummy this morning. Maybe that's like I'm feeling a lot of kind of exhilaration. I'm excited because that's happening. It helps inform me on what's happening in my body. And it also helps inform, what do I need? Do I need to set my timer for once an hour? I'm going to stop and do a box breathing just to check in and resettle myself. Do I need to have a vigorous workout today to really punch out some of this frustration and anger, whether I know whether it's rooted in or not? It needs to be moved through. I need to acknowledge it and move it through. Do I need some yoga and stretching? Am I feeling tight? It just helps inform. Music. Do I need to dance around? There's certain kinds of music. If I'm feeling anxious while I'm driving, I'll pop in my favorite playlist and start singing with the radio to help soothe myself and remind myself that I'm safe. So those are some examples.
Okay. So I think I heard you say that sometimes when you're having the physical sensations, that surface layer of the emotion, you can identify where that's coming from before you move through the actual emotion. And sometimes you don't know where it's coming from until you move through the emotions. So it's situational, contextual.
It is. And for me, writing helps me a lot. Sometimes I will just, if I can identify, like there was a particular thing the other day that I was really frustrated about, and there wasn't really a healthy, immediate way to have this conversation.
Okay.
And so I wrote about it as if I were talking to the person. I was able to release that through the writing. I felt better already. And I showed up better later in the day when I had to see that person
Okay.
and how I engaged with them because I acknowledged it. So sometimes it's just writing it out. But yeah, but it's putting a name to it. If you can't get to it, it's like make a note for yourself. I personally am in therapy. So I'll make a note like this is something to bring, like I think it might be rooted here, but I'm really not sure. That doesn't mean I can't, I've acknowledged it. I can still work my body out. There was things that happened as I grew up that bring up a lot of different triggers in me. So I can know that and be like, this is, but I always ask myself, is this based in truth? Like this root thing that comes up is coming from, I have a fear of this happening. Is that based in truth or an old narrative? And that will sometimes, even if I can't nail it exactly, it helps inform me, but it also helps inform what do I need today? Or what do I have the bandwidth for today? I'm like, okay, I've got this on my schedule. Based on this and what I've got time, because sometimes you don't have time to process at all. You have to,
no, you don't.
You have to like, okay, noted. I've acknowledged that. Got to come back and revisit this later, but I got to Zoom in 15 minutes. So, but it also, okay, I know that about myself now. So I need to watch and make sure that I'm not taking that out on the people I'm meeting with, that is something that's not connected with them.
Right. Okay. So you brought up childhood stuff. What is your response to time has passed, you should be over it?
Ugh. That makes me, my first initial reaction is it makes me angry because it's the messaging that I got for years from the people that this happened with. It's like, oh, get over it. Oh, get over it. Your body stores it. So as much as you want to mentally, emotionally it's physically stored within your body. So that get over it piece is a false narrative. At some point, it's going to show up. And this, we don't talk about enough the connection between our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual health. These things are all connected.
Yes.
And they will show up in adverse ways. High blood pressure, anxiety, weight gain, headaches, food disorders, sore joints, numbness in your, there's so many ways that these things, or how we just approach things. I lived here in this hypervigilant mode for most of the first 50 years in my life. I'm 54 now. I'm still working out of it. It's still something I face every day because it was necessary for my existence from the time I was probably starting between 4 and 6 years old in order to manage emotions that were happening around me, the temperature of the room, what I could control in terms of people, the adults in my life's responses and reactions to things, how I could guide my brothers or help them or even get on them like, don't do that, or that's going to send, mom's going to start screaming, those kinds of things, all that, you carry all that with you. If you're not heard so many times, and I grew up in a generation, you probably did too, of a lot of like seen and not heard. There's no room for you to, parents not asking about what is upsetting you about this? Why cry? It was just stop crying, go to your room. Yeah. You're grounded. There was
people have it worse off than you.
Oh, yes. I call that weaponized gratitude. I don't know if that's mine or not, but I did an episode on weaponized gratitude. And it's all about those narratives. And we as women hear them especially. And I think it's even worse in our BIPOC communities. Well, you should be thankful that we gave you that job, by God. You're the only one here that looks like you. I'm like, yes. And that's a problem. Thanks for the job. And also that's a problem. And, and so with your parents of like, if you say, I feel like maybe that was a little bit unfair. Well, you're not thankful. I didn't say that. I never said I wasn't thankful. I just pointed out that there's maybe something else we can address here or look at. There was none of those nuanced conversations. And many times as women, there's still not room for them or people that don't want to have them because they don't even know what to do with their own emotions, let alone yours.
Right. They don't want to hear it.
No. And because it they don't know what to do with it. And also, it forces you to start looking at yourself. And people just don't necessarily want to go there. They don't
No.
want to go there. Um, or they're really like the power structure the way it is, and they don't want to change. Um, and that can be in families, that can be in
Yes.
workplaces, it can be faith spaces. There's so many places that
Can be with
exist.
friends.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, relationship dynamics.
Yes.
They like being the one that's in charge, that's the cruise director, always deciding what everybody else does. I mean, it shows up all over the place.
Yes,
And
it
that's,
does.
yeah. Yeah. And that's why
And
the work starts with you, because
yes.
then you can be aware of that. And then as you're aware, you can hopefully empower other people around you to like be aware as well.
Well, for me, what you just described is a boundary issue, our boundary issues.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
So, what do healthy boundaries look like for you?
For me, healthy boundaries look like how you engage in a relationship with me. I came from a background where there's a lot of cutting sarcasm is as humor, disguising all of the unprocessed anger, angst, and whatnot. And
Okay.
so I have created boundaries with people in my family that think it's okay to move through that way. And they could not, what is wrong? What are you talking about? That I'm just being
What's wrong with
funny.
you?
Exactly. It's always, what's wrong with that? I was just joking. Well, that wasn't funny. It hurt. It was
Yes.
cutting. It was rude. It was harmful. And they cannot see it. And what you have to accept, because I tried for years to help them see it, you can't make them see what they're unwilling to see. And
Mhm.
so at some point, even if it's hard, you have to create a space of like, I would feel it in my body. And my oldest daughter was like, I have watched you spend years bending over backwards, trying to accommodate these people. And you don't have to do that anymore, Mom. You don't have to do it. You don't owe them anything. And it was really kind of like, gosh, my adult daughter is like speaking to me like that. And she's watched, she'd watched this from the time she was a little kid.
Yeah.
And it finally got to a point where I would notice when I finally started living out of disassociation and in touch with what I was feeling and what my body was experiencing, I would notice every time it was time to be around with these people, my body would just seize up about 45 minutes before I got there. Or if I went into a certain space, I could just feel it coming. I'm like, this is not good. And I don't have to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and I think what's important with boundaries is that you have to express them, and it's hard at first, and you don't always get it right, but you got to express them in a way of like, for me, this is not working.
Right.
Instead of going back, you need to do this and you should do that. That's going to not,
Oh, no, no, no. It's
never
my
work.
boundaries are not about the other person.
Exactly.
My
They are
boundaries are
about
about
you.
what I allow and take from the
Exactly.
other person.
Exactly. What I'm going to expose myself to, what I'm going to interact with, and in respect for what is healthy for me.
Yes.
And it is up to the other person if they decide to do with it. They may not like it. It hasn't been all that warmly received by people on the other end of this, but it just became necessary. And it's like, I'll love you from afar, no hard feelings in turn,
Yes.
but I cannot do this anymore. And I will not do this anymore. I can continue. I will not. It's just not, it's non-negotiable for me. So that's a big part of it. And also, do you see me? Do you honor me? Can I show up? Do I feel safe with you? Can I show up as my full authentic self with you? If I can't, there's going to be a boundary around amount of time we spend together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's okay if they choose to live that way.
Exactly. That is their choice, and you're not responsible for it.
You're not responsible, nor do you have to be anybody's emotional punching bag or doormat.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay
Exactly.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it doesn't have to be we try to create these good, bad narratives in these kinds of things. And it's like, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, we don't have to make anybody the bad guy. We don't
Nope.
have to blame anybody for
Nope.
anything. It's just acknowledging what it does and does not work for you.
Exactly. And do what works.
Exactly.
If it doesn't work, do something different.
Right. And that's the other thing too. Be patient as you're figuring this out. You know, I spent a lot of years not living that way. It's still taking me time to figure out how to navigate relationships and spaces that are healthy for me, catching myself not going back into codependent mode, catching myself, am I being present or am I feeling pressured? I still really struggle with when things are really ramping up at work and I'm feeling like I need to meet some deadlines, where that whole, you got to be perfect, you got to be good, don't miss that, that's not going very well. You know, I have to really stop and like, that is not true. Yes. Nothing's going to go off the rails. You know, it's no one's life is in danger if this doesn't go X, Y, and Z today, and kind of bringing it back to taking it off, everything's urgent on fire to, okay, you know, mode too. So I'm still, you know, working this out. And you talk about the people that have these conversations, the people that need it the most. Well, I definitely fall into that category.
Well, we all need these conversations.
We do. And we do. You and I are having these conversations. We are having conversations with other people, with other women. We must do this together. If we're going to change narratives, we got to learn how to show up well for ourselves so that we can show up for each other. So we can come together as a community. We can see each other's challenges, each other's battles. I know that my journey and your journey are not the same. They can't be the same. We're two different people. And
it's not a competition.
Exactly. And there's room for all of us.
All of us.
We're all necessary, important, and valuable. We need to bring each other along. And where there's space for me, there's space for you. Let's create more space for somebody else. And quit.
Preach.
Yes. Yeah. And quit kicking the person down on the ladder behind you because you've been told this false narrative that there's only room for one of you in the room. No.
Right.
No.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of different ways you can show up. I mean, how can you show up supporting another woman in the space? You know, how can you, you know, I have a tremendous amount of privilege as a middle-aged white woman in America. So how can I show up and create space for those that don't have the same privilege as me?
Right.
How can we learn those stories, share those stories, magnify those voices, make room for all of that? I mean, each of us can ask in our own way, but it's got to start with me. Because
you have to start with you.
Yeah.
The world works from the inside out. And if you're not right with yourself, then you are going to project that onto other people.
Yeah.
So you have to start with self, and that is not selfish.
No, it's necessary.
It's necessary. And I refer to healthy selfishness.
Yes.
It is necessary. Yeah. It is necessary. So in addition to allowing yourself to feel what you feel when you feel it, and to establish healthy boundaries, what are some of your self-care practices?
I have kind of a menu that I work from. I have yoga, I have breathing exercises, I walk, I get out in nature, get outside, out on the water. I love the water, whether it's the ocean, the river, my pool. I love the water and the sun and just the energy that I get from that, mountains. So and I always ask people, I'm like, list those 5 things that nourish you. And make sure that you're interacting with those things that nourish you, whatever that might be. It might be your favorite songs. It might be a movie. Yeah. It doesn't always have to be those, I'm going to go for a run or exercise or lift weights. Right. It can be those other things that nourish you, relationships. You know, what are those things that nourish you? So things that nourish me are a very important part of my self-care. Living out of my own expectations and not others' expectations. Am I living from my own expectations, my own values? How am I feeding and fueling my body? Have I had enough water today? And what kind of foods am I fueling myself with that's going to allow me to show up in the best way possible? Those basic needs are, we jump to the other stuff. I'm like, make sure you're making room. Don't skip lunch today because you got 4 Zoom meetings. I mean,
Right.
make sure you're making room for those things.
Prepare
Boundaries
for
are
it.
exactly, prepare for it. Energize yourself. What does your morning look like? What are you doing to get ready for your day? For me, on a traditional morning is get up, make my coffee, sit down, do some journaling. My husband and I will do some word puzzles together. We have a couples journal we do together. I do some breathing exercises. I've got a quick 3 to 4 minute yoga stretch just to kind of wake up my body, grab my ginger tea, and kind of and then see what's on my calendar for the day.
Okay.
That allows me to prepare my body, mind, spirit, all those things, rather than just picking up the phone as soon as I turn over and start scrolling.
Okay.
So that allows me to start, because I already know that I tend to be hyper vigilant. So I got to make sure that I'm temping it down.
Yes.
So I'm not starting from there. I know that's something I'd have to deal with.
And not just in the morning, temper yourself.
No,
It's
in the
throughout the day when you
evening.
catch yourself spiking.
Exactly. And that's where that timing piece comes in. I mean, when I know I'm feeling a lot right now in a time space, then I have to be mindful of, like, I need to stop every hour and do a 2-minute box breathing.
Okay.
I need to stop every hour and walk outside and take a deep breath for a minute. Or if you don't have out, but I put my alarm on, because I just say it, I'll get busy in my list and I'll do it. So I actually put my alarm on, and as soon as I'm done with it at that time, I reset the alarm for the next time. Otherwise it doesn't happen.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. And also sometimes too, looking at the list and then pay attention, like I might get to a certain point of the day, I'm like, I'm feeling overdrawn. What on here doesn't have to happen today? Or is there some things I can move around? Other days I might be more energetic and decide to dive into more, but I'm able to be flexible with that. I'm very fortunate that way. Not everybody's that fortunate.
Well, you can't identify or tap into your flexibility if you're not present. If you
Yeah.
don't understand and see that today is a little different than yesterday, than last week or the last month, and give yourself those appropriate choices to make,
Yeah.
those adjustments to make, then it's not going to happen if you're not present. If you're
Absolutely.
mindless and stuck to a story or a script.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah. And that script piece is so important. I mean, when I talk about living out of your own expectations, write down the things you're engaged with. How many of those, and there's things we have to do that are just, no matter what, you got to feed the kids, you got to do the dishes, you got to wash your clothes. I mean, there's some things that are just, you're going to always have to do, whether you love them or not. But I'm talking about where you spend your time, who you give your time to, how much of it you give. Are those things that you feel obligated to, or are those things how do you feel about it? Do you feel called about it? Do you feel passionate about it? Is that something that someone else told you should be doing, or is that something you want to be doing? It's take a look at the script of your life, the calendar of your life. And because your body will tell you, if you're just groaning about every single thing it is you have to do in the day, it's time to look at the script. Some people don't have that privilege. Some people have a script that they've got to live by to survive, to feed their families.
Yes.
They don't have other options. So where in your day can you nourish yourself? Is it that favorite sound list that you can listen to as you're walking to work, taking the bus to work, driving to work, taking the kids to school? Is there 15 minutes in your day that you can do after work to nourish yourself with something? Go for a quick swim in the lake, hose yourself down, whatever that thing is. Sit in the car for 15 minutes and listen to your favorite podcast.
Right. And for people who don't have a lot of flexibility in their day, take your breaks at work.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And those, I'm glad you brought that up. Those, don't minimize that 15-minute break and the value that it can bring to you if you use it wisely and well. Yes. You're legally obligated to it. And so don't miss that. And there's also these misnomers out there that you work. And the people that work through their breaks, they're celebrated. Like, no, that is terrible. I mean,
And they fall over too.
they do. They fall over, they get sick.
Yes.
They don't live as long as they should. Stress. I mean, there's just so many things that come into play. So exactly, take that break, get that snack, listen to that favorite song, or just sit outside in the quiet with no noise.
Get a
I mean,
little
just,
sunshine.
yeah. I mean, so
Yeah.
find those places to fill with things that you do care about and love. Sing in the shower, those kinds of things.
Well, let me just make this abundantly clear to the audience. Self-care can be quick and
Mhm.
it can be simple.
Yes.
Doesn't require a lot of money, a lot of time, or any extravagance. It can start with 5 minutes, 15 minutes of your day, just
Mhm.
focusing on what you need and what nourishes you. So
Yeah,
thank you, Melissa, for those tips. Now, we could go all day.
we could. We could.
I'm just feeding off your passion. And when I said preach earlier, I meant to say, I also wanted to say that you are preaching to the choir. So you do have a captive audience. Unfortunately, we both have other things to get done today. So I just want to thank you so much for being here. And if you could wrap this up
Mhm.
in one nugget, what is the one takeaway you want the audience to have?
I want you all to write down 3 to 5 things that nourish you and ask yourself, am I engaging in any of those right now? And if you aren't, pick 1, 3, 5 that feel manageable and doable and start implementing them in your day or your week. And if you are, keep doing it and keep, but ask yourself that question. We don't ask ourselves that enough.
No, we don't. We don't. I thank you. I really appreciate that answer. Now, if someone has a question or wants to work with you or wants to
Mhm.
find your podcast, how can they reach out?
Go to embracinglayers.com, all one word, and everything's there. Our podcast episodes, our internet radio show episodes. We have a new book right now that's in pre-sale mode, Embracing Layers Unapologetically. That's available pre-sale. That'll be released September 4th. I'm available to come talk to your group, to go to our contact form on the website if you'd like me to come talk to you about these things that you heard today. I'd love to do that. But embracinglayers.com, you can find where to follow us on our socials are on there. Everything's there.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your personal experience and what you've learned, how you're implementing that and how you're living now as this very vibrant, passionate human being.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate it. And thank you for what you do. These conversations matter. They're important. We've got to keep having them. And I'm so happy to have been able to talk with you. And I look forward to having you with me. We're going to do that down the road too.
Oh, absolutely. I'm ready.
All
Just
right.
say when.
Awesome. I will.
Okay, well, you take care and we'll be in touch. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode of the Glen Alex Show. We really hope you learned how using your emotional intelligence skill set can enhance your mental, emotional, physical, and overall health. So please like, subscribe, and share this episode.
Refresh your spirit with a nourishing thought.
Please allow me to leave you with this nourishing thought. Author Travis Bradberry said, people who fail to use their emotional intelligence skills are more likely to turn to other, less effective means of managing their mood. They are twice as likely to experience anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and even thoughts of suicide. Yeah, we humans are emotional creatures. We are also intellectual. So to favor one over the other sets you up for needless pain and suffering. Emotional intelligence is a skill set that partners the emotions with the intellect. This partnership is required to unpack the layers of human emotion so that we can be healthy human beings. Please keep in mind that healthy individuals create a healthy collective. And I'd like to share an excerpt from the Emoting with Intelligence chapter of my 3-time award-winning book, Living in Total Health. Emotional intelligence involves understanding that emotions are messengers and not the message. Emotions relay information that is pertinent to our specific situations and to life in general. If we stop at the feelings, then we miss the boat because feelings are nothing more than signals to get us to look at the message carried by the emotion. Another way to look at it is to think of fear or anger, for example, as the delivery man. The message is inside the parcel that we are invited to open and review. Stopping at the physical sensations is like deep sea diving in a bathtub. You will bang your head and get nowhere. While surfers ride the waves on top, the deep sea diver must delve below the surface, below the active and volatile waves, and dive into the depths where the treasure lies. For emotional wellness, the treasure is revealed by the message the underlying emotion delivers, and it subsequently inspires behavior characterized by awareness and choice. Feelings reside on the surface with abundant energy, just as waves live and splash atop the ocean. As one dives thoughtfully into an emotional experience, the depths become calmer and calmer. Personally, I find my emotions to be calming because they provide a sense of peace, control, and direction. Then it becomes clearer to me what actions, if any, I may need to take when I'm weathering the storms of feelings. To learn more about how to strengthen and develop your emotional intelligence skills, please visit glenalex.com, order your copy of my award-winning book, Living in Total Health, book your complimentary consultation with me, and read my blogs. Then, tune in to the next episode of The Glen Alex Show. And until next time, be well.